Welcome back to the next episode of Rocket Construction in Miss Thompson's Kitchen. And if you hear noise in the background, it's because I'm doing laundry and my washing machine is right over there. Anyway, so today our job is going to be to construct the motor mount. And you're going to need a few things for the motor mount. So you should have some kind of shiny metal tape that's in your kit. You should have 4 of these little like metal clips. You should have a longer piece of this tube. And you're going to need some sort of cardboard. Now, I gave you in your kit a nice big chunk of cardboard. When we're doing these in the classroom, we usually design them on CAD and then we cut them out using the laser engraver because it's really precise. Unfortunately, I don't have enough laser engravers to send one home with each kid. Wish we did. And so we're going to be having to construct these by hand and cut them by hand. So I actually found that cardboard a little too thick to be able to cut. And I don't have a nice sharp X-Acto knife here at home. So I'm actually going to make mine out of these nice sturdy paper plates. And you're free to substitute any materials that you would like in here at any place. So if you want to use a different kind of cardboard or cardstock for your motor mount, obviously we need it to be fairly sturdy because we need to hold the motors in place. But we also want it to be lightweight because we don't want to, these D motors that we're using actually by themselves have a mass of about, I think if I remember right, it's like about 180 grams just by the motors alone, and add another about 100 grams using the egg and all of the packing material, and you've got almost 300 grams worth of payload right there. And so you want to try to keep it as light as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is make what I call like a little template that you're going to use for your motor mounts. Now, I couldn't find enough pool noodles for me to be able to make enough kits for everybody and then have a pool noodle for myself. So as you know, I've been using this cardboard tube. It's a little bit bigger than your guys' pool noodles. So the way I have mine drawn in here, you're not going to have as much room around the outside edge. So just have that in mind going into it, that you will not have as much space on yours. Mine's just a little bit bigger. So basically the way that you make your template is starting by tracing around the outside of the mold. So that's going to be your pool noodle. And you're just going to want to trace it all the way around the edge with a pencil or something onto just a scratch piece of paper. So as you can see, it's just pretty much a big flat circle. Okay, then we're going to cut the circle out. And my dog got a hold of the handles on my scissors, so I'm actually using my plant and herb scissors here. So that's why they look so weird. But they do cut pretty good. All right, so I just basically cut out my circle. Now we're gonna have 4 D motors. We use D12s, which means that the propellant kind of burns for 12 seconds, and these have the nozzles in them. But we have 3 that are going to be D12 zeros. So basically they're just going to burn out one end. And then we have one that's a D12 5, which means after 5 seconds, after it burns the initial 12 seconds, it waits 5 seconds, and then it does a counter pulse, and this is what's going to blow the parachute out of your rocket. So we're going to put these 4 motors in, kind of all together, and the easiest thing to do is to balance them kind of in a geometric pattern. Now you could, if you wanted to try, put one in the middle and do 3 around the outside at 30-degree angles. You're free to try whatever configuration you can fit into your body tube. But the simplest one is to basically divide it into quarters and put 1 in each quadrant. Trying to figure out how to teach you to do that in a very geometrically sound way without having CAD, because this is so much easier in CAD because you can just move it around wherever you want it and go, oh, that didn't fit there, so I'm going to try it someplace else. That's why we're going to be making this little template first, because I can divide it into 4 parts. So I just folded it in half again. Now I have 4 nice little quadrants. I'm going to trace my motor mount tube, and this is where you kind of have a little bit of decision making. You can put it anywhere here in this quadrant that you want. I'm going to stick it more towards the middle, and I will explain why here in a second. So now I'm just tracing around the motor mount tube. And so now I have a circle that basically looks like this. Now you don't want to do it all the way to the edge, because you do want some space there to hold the motor in place. But you can, depending on the material and how stiff it is, you can put it pretty close together. So now I'm just going to kind of cut my circle through all 4 layers of the paper. That way they're all going to be exactly the same size, and they'll be geometrically balanced in reference to each other. And you always want to make sure that it fits through. You don't want it too loose, but you want it to, fit around the motor mount tube. We will end up gluing those in place, but want to make sure it's big enough for it to fit through. And then you can unfold it, and that will be the layout that you're going to do for your motor mounts. Now, another thing that we usually do when we're in class, we do something called cantering them. And I will put a link up on Google Classroom that kind of explains the idea of cantering, but it has to do with the stability of the rocket. So just like with our gliders, we wanted the center of pressure to be in a certain place comparative to the center of gravity. And we want the same thing with our rocket. So we're going to be working on some math. We're going to do some math, guys. That whole systems of equations thing from algebra, where you're like, when are we ever going to use this? Well, we're going to use this. And that'll be a separate lesson. But we want to adjust where our center of pressure and our center of gravity is in relationship to each other. And something that can help you make sure that that's like dynamic and stable if the rocket bends, instead of making it go even further in that direction. If you canter the engines, it helps to restabilize, because the balance of pressure in cantered engines points towards the middle instead of pointing wherever the nose is. And so to canter your engines, you would do one template for the inside part of the motor mount that's as close as you can get them together, and then you would do a second template for the outside, that's going to have them a little farther apart. And what will happen when the engines are inside the mount, you'll notice that they have a little bit of a bend, well, not bend, a little bit of an angle to them so that they're pointing up towards the middle of the rocket. So you don't have to canter your engines at all. It's just something, an opportunity for some of you who are like, ooh, I want to try that, to go ahead and try it. So once you have your template, all I did was took and traced it out on the back of my plate. So tracing it so that it's nice and dark and I can see all my lines. Don't forget to trace where you're cutting out for the motor mounts. So I've basically transferred it onto my plate. Now, the key here though, when you're cutting this out, is you're not going to want to cut right on the line. I recommend about 1 centimeter out from the edge where the line is. And then that gives you a little space to work with to create some tabs that'll help hold this in place, especially if you're using something that's pretty thin like this paper plate versus something that's fairly thick and has a pretty good surface for glue like the side of the cardboard. So I've got a little bit of space all the way around the edge, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip little kind of tabs back to that line. And I'm just going to keep going all the way around like this. So can you see how I got these little kind of tabs all the way around? And then what's going to happen then is you're going to bend them. Oh, whoops, hold on. Stop. Time out. I almost forgot a really important step. Before you cut everything, we're going to cover this with the silver tape. And so you're just going to take and cut a couple strips. It shouldn't take more than like 2 or 3 to go all the way across. And we're going to be using that silver tape in a couple of spots. So be kind of use it sparingly. But I should have given you enough to go across this around the bottom of your body tube, and then also enough that you can put it on the inside edges of your fins if you decide to have them down below where the engines are. And that just it doesn't keep everything from catching on fire, but it will help to keep it from catching on fire. So what you'll notice here is now I have all of these little tabs all around the edge. And what you'll be doing is you'll be bending them so that you've got a nice thick surface for when you glue it into your rocket. And you want to make sure that you kind of test it in your body tube before you finish like adding everything in your mount. So to test it in your body tube, you're basically just going to kind of stuff it in there and make sure that it has nice contact all the way around. Oh, I got to look at this. I'm trying to do it for the camera and it's not working. I will get it nicely positioned and then I will show you what it looks like. So you're going to want it to, it's kind of hard without everything in there, but you want it to go right against the sides all the way around because you're going to be gluing that in place and you want lots of places for the glue to adhere. Otherwise, you'll at the end, you'll find that your rocket doesn't take off and that your motor mount is up where your egg is supposed to be. And I would say of the rocket disasters that we've had in the past, the most common one has been the motor mount not being glued in strong enough so that the motors stay at the bottom. And then the second one I would say is the chutes getting wadded up too much, so they either get stuck and not deploy, or they catch on fire because they're stuck in there. So as you can see, basically what I did was I went all the way around after I covered it with the foil, and then bent these pieces back, and you're gonna have to kind of do that trial and error. You might have to clip a few a little bit further, but basically you're gonna keep going until it's all the way around and it looks something like this. Now I tend to bend them forward because it gives me a little bit of a lip to hold on when I actually go to install the motor mount once it's all glued together. And that way you've got something to grip on. Trust me, that will make it much easier and much less frustrating. Also, I would recommend not doing anything to the other end of your body tube until you have your motor mount completely into place, because I've had a fair number of students having to take things out of the other end and try to get their arms all the way down in there to try and hold things, position things to glue them in place. All right, so the next step, that once you get the outer edge and you know that this fits nicely into your body tube, is we're going to cut the holes where the motor tubing is going to go. And so kind of the same thing that we did with the edge, what I do is I kind of jab a little hole there. Let's not have any trips to the ER. And I just kind of clip around like I'm cutting out little pieces of pie all the way around to the edge. So if you can see, I'm kind of cutting these little pie-shaped wedges all the way around to that edging line. And that keeps you from destroying the edges because you're trying to jam the scissors in there and stuff. But also, just like what it did around the outside edge, it gives me all these nifty little tabs that then are something that will hold glue, and when I'm trying to connect and glue the tube into place. So if you look at the back side, see how there are just a bunch of little wedges. And so again, you want to make sure, always testing to make sure that it fits. Like this is not fitting, so that means I got to trim back a little bit more where I didn't quite cut far enough. And so there's a lot of little trial and error and adjustments that get made when we're using such imperfect tools. If you were working for NASA, they'd have really precise instruments that would be doing all of this. But now you can see the tube fits through, and I've got all these little tabs sticking up. Now you're going to do that 4 times, so 1 for each one of these tubes. And eventually, so this is the back side of my my motor mount that I'm working on. You're going to glue them in like what I've done here. So mine aren't all the same size because I took all the little bits and pieces that were left over so that I would have plenty of materials for you guys all to each do one individually instead of in a team. And so mine aren't super duper straight across, but that's okay because the pins are going to hold the engine in place. So if your guys's aren't perfect, that's not a big deal. But essentially, you want about 2.5 inches. So I measured with my ruler up 2.5 inches, and I marked the spot here. And again, this is just cardboard. So, cut a little hole in there and then just kind of cut little with your scissors all the way around. And then if you're really anal like I am, you can kind of trim the edge a little bit, make sure it's nice and straight. But basically, there you have your little tube. You're going to want to do that 4 times. So that's why I have 4 holes. And then the thing that kids always forget, you need to have this little clip in there. The clip is actually what is going to hold the engine in place. And hold on, I got to trim mine just a little bit more. The bottom side here was kind of squished. Fold it over. All right. Okay. So you're going to make sure that the clip edge is facing inward. And then you're going to put it down through the motor mount. Now, I'm a little anal. I like all of my clips on the inside in the middle. That helps them be out of the way when I'm attaching the igniters. So when we launch, if any of the igniters touch metal, then it shorts the circuit and it doesn't ignite the engines. And so I like them all to be in the middle because then they're kind of out of the way. It also helps when you go to put in your engines because you can just kind of like push in. But basically the way this works is the little clip holds your engine into place and keeps it from falling out during flight. And so that's what that little clip is there for. So once you have your 4 holes, you can stick your little cardboard tubes in there. Make sure that your clips are in place. And then what I usually do is I set it on a little flat surface and I just do the bottom side first, make sure it all lines up. And then once that's glued in place, then you can add the top surface. And notice I barely have it like a centimeter above. You just want it high enough that it's going to hold on to those cardboard tubes, pretty strongly. But you don't have to have a certain amount sticking out. In fact, when I put this end on, it's probably going to be pretty close to the height of whatever my small tube is here. So once you have them cut out and in place, the way that I glued them in, where's the one that I'm working on? This one here. So basically what I did was I kind of stuffed it out so it sticks out a little bit more. I put some glue all around the edge. Like this. And then I gave you little dauber things that you can use to spread it out. This stuff isn't dangerous. It's Elmer's glue. You guys ate stuff like this when you're in kindergarten. So I just kind of move it around with my finger. And then, like I said, I put it on a solid surface and kind of make sure that they're all about the same distance through my little mount. And then just set it aside somewhere to dry. You can make sure that the little tabs are kind of sucked up against that cardboard tube, but they do it pretty well on their own. And then you just need to let it dry. We'll come back for part 2 and I'll show you how to add the top, and then you'll want to let it dry again, and then it'll be even another episode for mounting it into the body tube itself. So this is going to be a good 3-day process for you. If you get everything cut out in the bottom part glued in one day, you can glue the second part in another day and then actually mount it inside your body tube on the 3rd day. So there you go. And that's making the motor mount. And again, if you have any questions, if you're struggling with anything, if anything's not working, let me know. If you want to substitute materials, go for it. Worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work. So yeah, it's been great, and I miss you guys all, and I can't wait to start planning our launch day. So have a great 3-day weekend with Memorial Day, and I will see you when we come back to do the next part of our motor mount.